Okay, so I just want to do a quick introduction to my center. It's a technology center called CEDAR. So we are Ireland's Centre for AI. We're not for profit. We were established in 2013, and we're funded basically by the state through two agencies. Um, so anyway, so I work for an organization that is set up to support Irish business. We are based in a university because we can get access to basic research and talent, like staff in the university. And we provide an opportunity for graduates to work in industry as a result. And we, of course, we can be part of lots of research projects. So, in terms of technology readiness level, we don't do basic research in AI, in science. We basically start from proof of concept all the way up to deployment in the marketplace. So that is the space in which we span, and we work with centers that do basic research. So it is covered by our partners, but our focus is on turning solutions that get developed in a research capacity to bring them into the marketplace and find industry partners that would benefit from these AI solutions. So in terms of the areas we cover, it's quite big and it's getting bigger as generative AI, as AI expands. So as I said, generative AI and trustworthy AI may not have been on this slide back in 2013, but they are very much there now. In terms of sectors, we cover a lot of different sectors. So as I said, we support Irish business, and that goes into many different sectors. In terms of services we provide, there's quite a few. What I'm doing today can be kind of considered training. So just over there, but also I said research projects which we're part of. So there's an ethical and safe way to use AI for the benefit of research. So this applies. The content I will share with you today applies for the research element of what we do here, and is also for wider benefit because it's quite generalizable. So I'm going to introduce four different aspects today. First is just an update on where we're at in University College Dublin in terms of creating a policy for AI literacy more broadly, but generative AI is the main focus within that. And then I'm going to briefly introduce you to a study I did before joining the working group, which probably was the reason why I was invited to join the working group. And then I'm going to expand beyond my university with examples of policy and peer review research. And then I'll give you some final thoughts. And then, of course, we can take questions and comments and have a discussion afterwards. So this is what's happening in my university. We're currently setting up a training and resource hub. It's not there yet, but we're compiling all available resources and building new content. And there will be one place to go across the university. I should say that University College Dublin has over 5,000 staff and over 15,000 students. So it's quite a big organization. So creating something decentralized is it's not an easy task. But this is a necessary task because AI has arrived in a big way and is finding its way into all schools and all departments and all centers. And it's not just the preserve of computer science and the technical subject areas anymore. We're also, what we're doing here in the second point is we're actually advising the UMT, which is the University Management Team. So they have a set of governance principles, but we're tasked with bringing them to life inside the UCD context. So this is part of what we'll do when we go out and meet with different stakeholders in the university. We will come back and have a greater appreciation for who is doing what inside the university, and then we can feed this back to the management, and so that they have their list of principles, governance principles, but we'll then be able to say exactly which of the principles matter most to which schools. And then finally, I'll show you a compilation of existing materials because the good news is that we were not starting from zero. Because ChatGPT came out in late 2022, so people have been experimenting and bringing generative AI assistance into their research and into their schools since then. And as a result, different people have been thinking about policies and safe use and which are the recommended tools and so on. And so, what we did, the first thing we did was do an audit of what exists, what's publicly available within our university. And this is a selection here in front of you. And just to say, when you get the slides, the everything in blue is a hyperlink, so you can click through to the actual website, so you can see the resource yourself. And two things to point out here. One is that my own organization has some material that's offered as a part of the UCD ecosystem, because, as I said, we do offer training, and it is a core part of our service. And you can also see here that the mention of the EU AI Act is coming up in a couple of places, and that just goes to show how important it is for us in Ireland, being part of Europe. We're mandated to follow this legislation in Europe. And so since the release of the AI Act and the text of the AI Act, we, like many others in Europe, have to get to grips with what that means for our university. I'm not sure how relevant it is for you in Mexico, but yeah, this is the type of thing that motivates us to ensure that we have a policy, because there are penalties if we do not follow the legislation that is now enacted. So, as I said, it was this project here. The title is on the top of the screen. That gained me the invitation to join the working group. And this was a funded project, funded by my university, UCD, which me and my colleague Shane from computer science applied for and won. And it basically a small amount of money, like 10,000 euros, to do a 12-month project. And we chose to do it on this topic. And there we are receiving our award, myself and Shane. And in the middle is the president of UCD. And what we basically proposed to do was to take this document here from the European Commission. And this is the second version, so it was updated April 2025. And we wanted to translate this document for UCD's benefit. And to do that, we took this document and we went out and held workshops across our university, and we did surveys, and we compiled the results and produced a white paper, which had interesting results depending on the community we were working with. So we did one for computer science, we did one for Cedars community, and we did one for non-technical as well. And there was quite a clear contrast. I can see there's a hand raised there. Is there any issues with the subtitles?
No, please continue. Please continue.
Please continue. Sorry, I've just been told my slides are not showing. Is that correct? Can you not see my screen? Can someone confirm if they can see my screen?
Yeah, I can see them.
You can see?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So you can see responsible use of generative AI in research?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Diego. Cheers. Sorry, I was just told by a colleague who's watching from here in Dublin. Thanks. Okay, I'll continue. Apologies. Right. So let me just get control of my screen again. Okay, so essentially what we were doing was one of the things that was always existing before generative AI was called academic integrity. And the three major crimes against academic integrity are on your screen on the top left: research misconduct. So that's plagiarism, fabrication, and falsification. Okay. And the reality is, with generative AI is capable of all three crimes. Okay, you need to know that. And if you didn't know that, welcome to new learning. So you need to be aware that these tools that you use are capable of all three crimes against academic integrity. And academic integrity is something that has existed in universities for much longer than generative AI. But there's a chance that we might forget about these crimes when we get so excited about using the new tools. Okay, so we wanted to remind the university that these crimes are still capable of being committed using these tools. You're not safe. But we also wanted to highlight what they're good for because we're not advocating banning the use of these tools. We're advocating the safe use of these tools. So, and there was just some examples there. And I should say there's going to be some overlap with some of the material I present today because different institutions are converging on the same sort of thing, but I want to show you exactly how that looks in reality at the moment. So we generally agree on the risks, and then we sort of agree on the benefits. But it's important to kind of appreciate there are some institutional differences. So we did produce this white paper, and I do encourage you to check it out because in the paper we give the survey results from the different communities in UCD. And there are clear differences depending on your background. So, for example, some people feel very comfortable using the tool, depending on their background, and some people are very fearful of using the tool and are fearful about committing the academic integrity crimes. And others are also more mindful of the exact use they want to use it for. So I do recommend you check that out. And here's just some headlines that we included at the end of the white paper. And I'm just showing you, like, I don't want you to read every word on the screen, but I just want to show that you have the areas that we covered were like writing, reading, testing, and reviewing, because these were considered some of the core areas across the university. When you're using these tools, you might be using it for these four areas. So I'll move on. So now I want to focus on some aspects outside of my university. I'm going to start with some aspects from three peer review papers. Again, everything hyperlinked, so you have access to the papers afterwards. And I'm only going to introduce some bits that stood out to me. So the first one is just on the core principles. I like this visual, so feel free to also use it. But it's a nice snapshot of the different elements you should be thinking about when you're talking about responsible use of generative AI in research. Okay. The next one was a survey of researchers for their perceptions, but actually in the paper, they show a lot of use cases. So this is nice because it's the first table and I've split it into two. But just in case you were wondering about what are the capabilities from a research perspective, there's quite a few ideas here on this slide, from idea generation right through to writing and reporting. So there's quite a few here. And what you might notice actually through the course of my presentation is that some of the ideas suggested here may be critiqued, to say the least, as a risk later, okay? And that's just the reality. It is possible that something that could be a use case for this tool also comes with a risk. Okay, so when it comes to reviewing content, there are some good uses of that and there are some bad uses in terms of having the permission to put the content into the generative AI tool, for example. The third paper is the most technical, and some of you might appreciate that, some of you may not, but it's also quite accessible. And I just thought this is the only architecture image I'm going to share with you. For those that are into computer science has a preference for showing architecture graphs. So here's one for that section of the audience. And I just think it's a nice, simplified, as it says itself, simplified view of what's going on with a generative AI system. I suppose the external services on the right hand side is growing. Okay, so as this technology makes advancement, what's happening on the right hand side is expanding. And what I'm not seeing here are AI agents, but essentially we're already there, and we're having agents working on our behalf as things stand, interacting with large language models and updating in real time and processing in real time. But this is a nice simplified version just to give you a flavor for how the LLM is working. And I'm just going to share a couple of tables from this paper. And again, this paper was published in 2025, so it is subject to revision when the technology improves. But for example, this one is about saying how when you're working with it, you have to be careful of some constraints. Okay. So the first one, for example, is talking about an LLM being trained on a fixed data set. Okay. And that can certainly be true if you're using a freely available version online, not paying for a subscription for an enterprise version. They restrict the data set that's underpinning that. And so therefore, it's not up to date. And you can test this by trying to find recent references or ask it for references, and you'll find that it stops at 2023 or something like that. And then you know that you're not getting the last 2 years of information. And another thing that along here, just at the bottom, like probabilistic output. So again, the way in which this generates output is through likelihoods, the likelihood of the next token, the likelihood of the next word, for example. Okay, so it means that you can actually get, because of it, the way it's set up, you can actually get variable outputs over and over, which means that reproducibility is challenged. Okay, so again, that is a feature, not a bug, of LLMs at the moment. And it's just to be mindful of these characteristics. So I find this table useful for for that reason. And another thing, this table, what I like about it is that I'm going to say that a lot of people might be familiar with the top one here, that how they interact with a large language model is through the web-based versions. They go along in the browser and they open up a free version maybe, and they start prompting and getting outputs. But there is an API-based version as well, for like repeatable tasks. And so this is more in the programmable space. Okay. But this table is set up to give you some pros and cons. And then, of course, if you have a closed system, a local system down the bottom, you can have the safest of all worlds. But you then, because you've closed it off, you don't have access to real-time updates unless you have a way to do that. But then you invite bringing in the outside world, and then you have to be careful of data leakage, especially if what you're dealing with is very sensitive to your area of work. I think finally, this is the last table from the paper. But what I like about this table is that they've actually taken apart some of the aspects of running a study, a research study. So like you can have literature review, obviously that sets the scene, and then you've got your design part, and then you've got the administration and the execution of the study. So this gives some examples of best practice and things in the guideline column on the right. It's giving some examples of what to watch out for. So I like the way that separates out. Okay. But again, don't be surprised to find overlap between this content and other content I'm showing you today. And now I'm going to show you a selection of policies from other institutions, all academic institutions. I've got two here from the top two, TCD and TUD, are both from Dublin. The first one is Trinity College Dublin. The second one is Technical University Dublin. And then I've got two from the UK. I've got Oxford University and I've got York University. And then finally, I've got one from Illinois in America, in the US of A, I should say. And then I've got one from Toronto in Canada. So I do accept there's a Western world bias here to what I'm presenting, but it was being a native English speaker, I find it easiest to work with English, lo and behold. So that's one of my failings. But I'm just going to give you a flavor of different policies that are out there. So starting with Trinity College Dublin. And again, all the links are here, the hyperlinks, and then the QR codes to point to these websites if you're interested to learn more. So Trinity, for example, it gives a very simple 4 bullet points about why you might use generative AI to enhance your research. But very quickly below, it tells you, while you think of those 4 bullet points, it tells you more bullet points, more than 4 bullet points to watch out for. And that's something I'm seeing again and again. The benefits in these websites, when they list the benefits of generative AI, there's always less benefits than the risks. All of these sites that I'm looking at, they have much more, or certainly more risks than benefits. And that's definitely the case here with Trinity. So bear that in mind. Moving on to Technical University Dublin, the reason why I selected them is because they gave a bit more illustration around their use cases than Trinity did. So they've gone into a bit more detail and fleshing out the use cases that they're finding. And so you might find that interesting to see for if you're spanning the space for what's possible, have a look at their specific use cases. Now, for Oxford, what I like about this particular section of their policy is that they define substantive use, which is a thing actually, because in the European Commission document I showed you earlier, they talk about substantial use and non-substantial use. So that might be something you want to consider too in your institution. So because so students and staff don't know if what they're doing is considered substantial or not. So maybe it might be useful to think about this use of the tool is your own private use and it's fine. And this use is very substantial for your research profession, and you need to take it seriously. So Oxford has defined what it means by substantive use in the research life cycle, and here it is on the screen. Okay, so there's the list of what they consider substantial use. And they also say down below what it excludes. So I like this. It's very clear. And this should make it easier for students and staff to appreciate what is the sort of use that then means you have to comply with this policy. So everybody should be checking this document to ensure that their use is either considered substantial or not substantial. Then moving on to York, what I like about York's here is the limitations of generative AI. This isn't just about you deciding to use and what you should look out for. Sorry, I was getting feedback there. But they've actually just gone straight at limitations in general for generative AI. And I mean, like again, you'll be looking at this and you can see this written in other places. But one of the ones that I really like is down the bottom here. I'm just going to wave my cursor over it. So generative AI may be affected by the competency of the user. I really like that because this means that the focus is back on the user. So the competency of the user. So that means the user is responsible for being competent. And if you're not competent, you could then be, it's like not being able to drive a car and you go out on the road. It's a danger. But it's not just, but when in a personal capacity, it's a danger to yourself. But when you're talking about using generative AI in a professional capacity, it's not just you that you're a danger to, you're a danger to your institution. You could actually destroy the reputation of your institution. You could have a data breach. You could reveal something you shouldn't reveal. There could be IP release, which shouldn't have happened. You could release private, sensitive information of students, of staff. So competency of user is critical. And generative AI tools, they're not going to catch this. So anybody can use them, whether you're competent or not. So that's why in a professional sense, this is very, very important. Now, moving on to Illinois, what I like about Illinois is they go into more detail about disclosure of your use. So again, we're not saying don't use generative AI, but if you do use it, here's what you should do in terms of acknowledging your use of it. So it provides very clear guidance on how to cite your use of generative AI. And another thing it does, which I don't see in other policies, but I haven't done an exhaustive search, that is that they actually mention about protecting your own work. People don't think about their own work when they're writing and generating new work. But actually, you should be mindful of what you've already got and how that's being treated. So they actually have a section on protecting your own work and some tips on how to do it. Okay, so I like that. That's from Illinois. And then finally from Toronto. So I think this makes it very clear, as I said, that the opportunities, as they're calling them here, and the risks, you can see the difference in the number of risks compared to the number of opportunities. Okay, so there are opportunities, but there are also significant risks, including down the very bottom. I don't know if you can see this, but you will see it in the slides. Environmental impact, which may or may not be a thing for your institution to think of. But if universities are thinking about their footprint, their energy footprint, their climate change footprint, this is something we're being asked to think about here in Ireland. Then if your staff are using generative AI rather than using Google search like they did before, you're using more energy in a wider sense. Okay, so it's just doing an audit of your footprint, your energy footprint. But there's two other elements that I want to focus on with my final thoughts, and they are to do with accuracy and validity, and then professional identity. So I will move on. to my final thoughts. So the first one, sycophancy. Now, this is a term I didn't really hear until ChatGPT arrived. It's not a term that was in my life that often, but now it's in my life a lot. And that is the idea that these tools are designed to please us. And in the course of pleasing us, and why do they do that? They do that in order to retain us, to keep us, so that we keep coming back, we keep using. Okay? So the risk here is that through being sycophantic and us developing a relationship with the tool, accuracy is compromised in order to keep us happy. And you need to bear that in mind when you're developing your own relationship with the tool. And that's connected to your professional and your personal use, which I'll end on. So the link to this article is in the previous slide. So this is just out today, this 28th of January 2026. You can see the date down the bottom here. So from the King's College London. So they're very timely. I was looking this, so obviously I was updating the slides today and I see this. And it just to remind us, this article is to remind us about retaining expertise, human expertise. And I agree with this article. There's no substitute for human expertise with these tools. In order to be a human, a proper human in the loop, a proper driver of a car, you need to know how to drive the car. You need to be an expert. And so whatever your subject matter is, if you're not an expert in that subject, it might compromise your ability to validate the output. And if you cannot validate the output from the generative AI tool, there's a risk that you're going to commit an academic integrity crime because you won't know it's plagiarism if you don't know the sources. You won't know that it's fabricated if you don't know what the wider area, research area is. And then you won't be able to be testing falsified information. Okay, so you still need to be an expert. And in that case, you still need to do the requisite time to become an expert in whatever it is you choose to do. And they say it takes at least 10,000 hours to become an expert. So there's no shortcut for becoming an expert. These tools help you be a better expert and make you be more productive, but you still need to be an expert and you can't cut the corner. So this article speaks to that. Okay. So and in that sense, you still need to put in all the time you put in before ChatGPT arrived. And then you add this tool into your collection of tools that you use to do your job. Okay. So I can't stress that enough about staying in control as a human expert. And finally, I didn't have a good reference for this, so I'm just going to share with you my search. I put this in, and I don't normally totally factor in what the search assistant wants to tell me, but I like this one. So you see my prompt here off the browser. I'm very interested in this mixture between personal use and professional use. So I just asked, how can a personal use impact professional use? And you can see the answer here. So I'll just read it out. I like what it says. So obviously I have a bit of a bias towards receiving this information, but an individual's personal use of a large language model can influence their professional use by shaping their familiarity with the technology, decision-making styles, and trust in the model's outputs. That's important. So if you're using this tool in a personal way and you like what you get back and you trust it, that might color your judgment when you're using it in a professional capacity. Just bear that in mind, okay? You're trusting the model's outputs. And then the second sentence is the interaction can be enhanced or hindered in terms of the effectiveness in professional context, depending on the experience and reliance on the tool. And everybody has their own experience and reliance on the tool from 0 to 100. So it's not to be taken for granted that personal cannot affect professional. It's likely that it does in more ways than one. And it's just to be aware that your own use in your personal life can impact your professional life. Just don't think that there's no separation there. And the other thing that we're not quite yet got a handle on is that from the big tech perspective, and you use these tools, if you're using the same account for your personal and professional, the tool is recording this. It knows your personal and professional. So there's no distinction. Okay, it's a bit like having the same phone for your work and your personal life. Okay, but this time everything's in one place which can be saved and stored and analyzed from the tool company, from the provider. So just be mindful of that when it comes to sycophancy, and it happens to know you as a personal individual, it may also be sycophantic in a way that influences your professional output. And on that, I will stop because we're 20 minutes over. I want to say thank you very much for your time, your patience. Um, there's my email address and my LinkedIn. You can also get it from the slides when I share them with you. And finally, if you're interested to learn more about my organization, there's 3 opportunities on the last slide there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Byrne. Me gustaría poder comentarles algo sobre lo que el doctor acaba de platicarnos. Y ahorita le daré la palabra al doctor Diego para que nos complemente, por favor, pero creo que lo importante dentro de la plática es que el doctor Byrne nos comentó qué es la IA generativa y por qué su relevancia en los procesos de investigación o con los investigadores. Porque no hay que perder de vista que la IA o la inteligencia artificial generativa es una herramienta que le va a permitir al investigador poder redactar el borrador como un primer marco, resumir decenas de artículos científicos en minutos, generar ideas iniciales para las hipótesis de investigación. Sin embargo, no va a ser el trabajo del investigador. Y eso es lo que tenemos que considerar a la hora de estar trabajando. También comentó que el uso eficiencia de la IA generativa en la investigación se puede, que no solo debemos depender de usar inteligencia artificial y no solo una IA. Lo más importante es saber cómo usarla para poder formular buenos prompts o buenas instrucciones para que sean claras y eficientes a las preguntas que le estamos haciendo para que mejore resultados sobre el tema que estamos hablando. Por ejemplo, no solo podemos decirle, explícame el tema, sino sería más eficiente decirle, resume en 300 palabras los principales enfoques teóricos sobre aprendizaje automático, etcétera, 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 ¿no? Que era lo que él nos decía, es una forma de eficientar nuestro trabajo utilizando herramientas como la inteligencia artificial. También debe verse como un asistente, no como el autor ni el evaluador final del proyecto. Eh, nosotros como personas debemos decidir qué incluir, verificar las fuentes, ajustar el contexto y el contenido académico, porque eso le va a dar mucho más fuerza al trabajo que nosotros estamos haciendo. El usar como ejes centrales, nos comentó como ejes centrales de la conferencia, la protección de datos y confidencialidad es súper importante. Nosotros no siempre tenemos que decir quién o las personas o datos que no deban de ser conocidos para todos. Eso es súper importante, perdón. Información sensible, tampoco para que los resultados de la investigación pues sean los mejores que podamos tener, que no nos dé sesgos, que no nos genere errores, porque hoy la inteligencia artificial, por toda la información que tiene, todo lo que hace, por las malas prácticas que nosotros regularmente estamos llevando a cabo en el uso de la inteligencia artificial, pues nos puede generar, ¿no? En un artículo científico, el investigador debe comprobar cuando le pregunta a la IA que el autor existe, que esa revista que le está indicando es real, que el contenido es verificable y al final confiable para poder ser como un elemento dentro de nuestro trabajo. También subraya que el uso de inteligencia artificial debe ser transparente y alineado con las normas académicas. Todas las instituciones deberíamos de marcar de alguna manera la forma en la que debemos o no debemos utilizar y aplicar la inteligencia artificial, evitar el plagio lo más que se pueda. Digo, totalmente, no debemos de permitir el plagio, pero bueno, a veces lo hacemos con la inteligencia artificial y entre muchas cosas que dijo que la verdad la plática estuvo súper interesante. Tenemos que buscar objetivos claros para que sea eficiente, proteger datos y evitar errores para que sea segura, respetar la integridad académica para que tenga ética, que eso es lo más importante que hoy debemos de tener en el uso de la inteligencia artificial. Eh, Doctor Diego, no sé si quiera, por favor, decirnos algo más, es lo que pude resumir de lo que nos estuvo comentando el doctor.
Claro que sí. Primero que nada quiero agradecer mucho a Adrian. Adrian, thank you very much for your talk today. Aprecio mucho estos conocimientos que nos compartes hoy en día y sobre todo pues tratar de resaltar algunos de los conceptos que siento que son muy relevantes y muy aplicables. El doctor Adrian comenzó con un buen panorama acerca de su trabajo de investigación, acerca del grupo al que pertenece, de los casos de estudio, de todo su trabajo que ha realizado a través de diferentes años y nos explica o nos muestra también ciertos lineamientos o ciertos documentos o procedimientos que tienen otras universidades para el uso de la inteligencia artificial generativa. Y creo que aquí conviene también resaltar, y algo que lo menciona mucho, es que existen una mayor cantidad de riesgos que de ventajas en el uso de, de la inteligencia artificial generativa. Y es ahí también donde nosotros debemos repensar el uso de esta herramienta. También otro concepto que me pareció fascinante es este concepto que él llama cacofonía, que creo que es más que nada muy similar a este canto de las sirenas que te dicen o te tratan de atraer y te dicen lo que tú quieres escuchar. Y lo demuestra muy bien a través de que siempre estas herramientas de inteligencia artificial generativa nos van a estar diciendo lo que nosotros queremos escuchar. Lo que le preguntamos a través de este prompt, a través de estas instrucciones. Y también en la parte final de su conferencia hace también un énfasis en lo que es distinguir o cómo la inteligencia artificial generativa va a afectarnos tanto en lo personal como en lo profesional. Y creo ahí también es importante señalar que hay que separar y que no hay que dejarnos influenciar, no hay que estar dominados por esta herramienta y es importante tener que separar digamos, entre esta delicada línea. Y bueno, el doctor Adrián nos deja sus diapositivas para compartir. Es una presentación muy enriquecedora con diferentes links, con diferentes códigos QR que podemos acceder a diferentes sitios. También nos muestra muchísima artículos, links, investigación. Entonces, no sé si puedo darle la palabra aquí a Ruth, si quiere comentar algo o si tienen también algunas preguntas.
Sí,
Sí,
buenos días.
buenos días,
Ma-
adelante.
Maestro, ¿le pudiera preguntar qué tips nos puede dar como universidad para que podamos regular el uso de esta herramienta? Escuchaba al final en la traducción que hacía que dice que debemos ser expertos en, en nuestro campo. Entonces, si puede él darnos algunas tips que podamos implementar.
Claro que
Gracias.
sí, claro que sí, muy buen punto. El doctor Adrián ya comentaba acerca de esto, de que siento yo también que esta herramienta no va a superarnos a nosotros como el experto. Adrián propone mucho que nosotros debemos ser primero los expertos antes de utilizar esta herramienta. Entonces, Adrian, we have a couple of questions for you. So we would like to ask you, what suggestions or what recommendations you can bring us to the university as how that we can become experts in our fields, and also how can we better use these tools?
Okay, so the first question is how to become an expert, and the second one is how to use the tools. Um, in terms of like traditional academic research expertise, what's usually required is the ability to read peer review material in your area. So I don't know, like I'm going to give an answer for general, but like if depending on what school you're in, you have to have the ability to read a paper. You should be able to read from the introduction all the way through to the conclusion. Um, and you need to do that. And then you have to develop a way to be able to do that more quickly so that you can extract the relevant information. Usually, what happens when you want to become an expert and you want to get involved in a particular area, you have to first establish what has been achieved already. And the way to do that is to do a literature review in your area, and you have to be able to read the existing material. That helps you increase your knowledge, but it also makes you aware of the experts in your area. And it's very important to be aware of who the experts are and where they are. So like you can then understand that maybe there are schools in Mexico or schools in other parts of Central America or in Europe that are important for your research. And you only know this because you read the existing literature and you form a knowledge base of your area. So you need to be able to do that, and you should be able to do that without any generative AI tool, because you need to be able to read. The ability to read and synthesize information for your ability to understand and learn is important. So that's the first thing. The second thing then, when you want to make a contribution, is you need to know what is already achieved so that you don't reproduce unless the task is to reproduce an experiment in a new setting. But reproducing is actually something that's not done enough in academia because there's a bias towards new production of research. But so reproduction doesn't normally happen as much as it should happen. So if we focus on new production, you have to be able to motivate a new area based on existing evidence that doesn't, so that there's a gap that you can argue that doesn't exist and should exist. Okay, so you've got to be able to argue. Again, you need to be able to say from the evidence that this is a good idea to go and make progress in this area. Okay, and then you need to have methods to achieve the ability to create the new content. And then you try and publish and enhance. And basically what you're doing is adding new knowledge on top of existing knowledge. And then you can classify yourself as an expert. Okay, but that journey that you go on, it requires certain skills. It requires the ability to read. It requires the ability to synthesize evidence. It requires the ability to argue for a new direction. Imagine you're trying to convince somebody to give you money to do the work. You have to convince them that this is worth funding. Okay, you need the power of persuasion. This is another human skill you need. Okay. And they're not giving the money. The funder is not giving the money to a tool, to generative AI. They're giving the money to you if you can convince them that you are, first of all, that the area is worth funding and you are the person that deserves the money. So it's a good area and you're a good person. And you have to convince them that you're basically an exciting prospect. Okay. There's no mention of generative AI in this area at all. You take responsibility, okay, to becoming an expert. Okay. And then you need the methodology skills to deliver. But you usually have to convince the funder in advance that you identify the area, you motivate why it should happen, and then you say, okay, I can do this because I can get the data. I know exactly which methods are the most applicable, and I'm pretty sure that I will get the results to test my hypothesis. And this is a hypothesis worth testing. Okay, so you also have methodological skills that you can exercise, and you basically have to remain responsible for all of it, because afterwards you will have to defend your work. And you as a person will have to defend, and not the generative AI. When you go to conference, when you go to your PhD Viva, when you go and speak at a funders conference, you can't just put the laptop on the stage. We're not there yet. And you just press a button and say, okay, my generative AI will talk to you now and tell you what happened. You need to do this. So you need to have the ability to argue and persuade. You have to argue and persuade to get the funding, and then you have to defend afterwards that it was justified. Okay, and that the results should be published in the highest possible journal. Okay, all of this will help you become an expert, and all of this can be achieved without generative AI. But generative AI can help it. Can help you do your literature review. It can help you do your methods. It can help you write. It can help you think about arguments. it can help you think about ideas. But ultimately, you have to remain in control and responsible. And you have to be able to go and convince other humans to give you money to do the work, and to convince other humans to publish your work, to bring you to conference, and to ultimately give you a job afterwards. So you need to do the convincing. The tool will, generative AI can help you, but you have to be driving the car, as I say. And then on the second thing, which is how to use them, I suppose I'm answering the second part in response to the first one about how to use these tools. So the idea is that you yourself know what you want to do. We're starting from an assumption that you self-select for a career, self-select for maybe a subject matter in an area, and the generative AI can support you. Rather than, I'm not assuming that you don't know anything and you don't know what to do and you ask generative AI. Generative AI can start from that basis as well. Generative AI will give you an answer to anything. It's designed to give you an answer. But essentially, the best way to use these tools, I find, is when you already have an overview of what you're trying to do, and it can help you perfect what you're doing. That's generally the best way to sharpen it. It's like it helps you get sharper.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So, voy a resumir muy rápidamente porque me gustaría también dar paso a dos preguntas más. Creo que voy a tomar nada más dos preguntas debido al tiempo. Pero voy a resumir que creo que es a través de la investigación, a través de desarrollar estas habilidades críticas, estas habilidades de lectura, estas habilidades de conocer quiénes son los expertos en nuestras áreas, quiénes están dominando, y así pues también él menciona de que no solo se trata de llegar a repetir lo que dice la inteligencia artificial, sino es más bien ser críticos y analizar, porque él expone un ejemplo muy bonito acerca de, imagínense de que si ustedes están pidiendo un trabajo o están pidiendo apoyo para su investigación, no les va a dar el apoyo, en fin, va a ser dirigido a la persona, no va a ser dirigido a la inteligencia artificial, y tienen que desarrollar pues habilidades de convencimiento, habilidades de cómo hacer una investigación crítica. Adrian, I'm going to take two more questions. I know because of the time, but me gustaría...
Doctor, perdón, creo que pueden ser las personas que tienen la mano levantada.
Así es. Primero que nada, me gustaría darle paso al doctor Luis Borrás y posteriormente al doctor Hugo Guillén.
Ok.
Adelante.
Hello, Adrian. This is a very good explanation of AI. Just I'm surfing through your web page. So you offer some trainings and for researchers. Is it possible to talk a little bit more about it?
Yes, it is, Luis. And thanks for your question. And I'll answer to you, but also to everybody here. Please do reach out to me if you want to have a conversation about trainings, specific trainings afterwards. That's why I kept the links on the screen there. But yeah, if I just go up here, sorry, I'm just going to put my screen back. There you go. There's my email address. Email me and we can have a conversation offline. We can take it forward for sure. And that goes for anybody here.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. La siguiente pregunta, Hugo.
El doctor Hugo Guillén.
Doctor Hugo.
Gracias, doctor Diego. Good afternoon, Adrian. It was really nice hearing you. But I have a specific questions. As the president of the university, Dr. Osvaldo Chacon, told us to work in rural areas with Mayan indigenous people. So we're working in the mountains in the highlands of Chiapas, and we have a lot of students, Celtales and Choles, who goes to the university, but their Spanish is their second language, not the first language. Their first language is Mayans, Celtal or Chol. So now that we have generative AI, specifically ChatGPT, so they can write reports, do research in different assignments they have. And the big question is, what skills do they have to keep? Some people, some researchers say that we should continue writing, or the student should continue writing with notebook and pencil, because that's the only way they can be thinking or doing intuitive thinking, analytical thinking. But there is a lot of people who are using these tools, generative AI, specifically ChatGPT. So what will be your suggestions for rural areas in Chiapas where they have as a second language Spanish? What skills do they have to keep in order to take advantage of AI? Thank you very much, Adrian, and the everybody that is working with you.
Yeah, so one thing, Hugo, and thanks for your question, is thinking about the students. If they think about when they do anything, when they write anything, or the tools that they use, pen and paper or computer, do they think about the audience they're trying to reach? Are they just trying to reach the instructor, or are they trying to reach different communities? And then sometimes that helps answer the question. When you think about who you're trying to reach, what medium is preferable, or might be advantageous for the onward dissemination of the work. Now that might be a bit broad for these students, but to just think about it in terms of like the end product, and that may be suggesting a method, a medium to operate in. But that's separate from the use of generative AI. I mean, generative AI can help go between languages. But obviously, the thing with generative AI is you can forget about pen and paper. You need to. So in order to be able to use the technology, you need to have access to computing, and you need to have access to internet. These are the necessary tools. Okay, so this needs to happen, and then it's about. And by the way, you're also raising an interesting point, Hugo, which is a small part of my slide set, but I didn't highlight it, which is to do with the digital divide, which is we're not having a fair fight here in terms of access to these tools, because some people have way more tokens to spend on the generative AI tools than others, and that means that they can process way more prompts and also ingest way more information than others. So I'm just adding that in as value add that your question has prompted me to think about, is the divide between small time users and big time users. And it's like the equivalent of having a very intelligent, very knowledgeable uncle in your family. Not everybody has that type of uncle who has access to an encyclopedia of information. And when you get a homework assignment, you can call to your uncle's house and say, "Hi, uncle, can you help me?" Not everybody has that uncle. So therefore, not everybody has that generative AI tool. Okay. So another thing to think about is like, how do you understand that? So I guess you need to, if you understand your students and the inequality in terms of their access to these tools, that can have an impact on the type of outputs they're capable of producing. So to understand that there is an inequality there on top of the natural inequality that we have in our heads, in our abilities to function, the tools that we have access to is unequal, and it can lead to very unequal. On top of like potentially plagiarized work, or your ability to produce work with generative AI is greater, but you also run the risk of that work being guilty of a number of academic crimes. It just means that you can produce more, and some of it could be good more, and some of it can be bad more. So I think it's very interesting. I think if we're talking about digital divide, Hugo, I think it would be a very useful thing for you to appreciate the access to tools that your students have, and just being mindful of then the ability to produce output. And then the question is, what is this output for? Is it an audience that matters, and that audience receives the information either digitally or with pen and paper, or scanned? If you have a pen, if you write something on a piece of paper, you can scan it and then it becomes digitized. Is that important? It's what you can decide with your students what the value is, what the output is. And I think the main thing is to be clear with the students, because I think students struggle when there's not clarity around using these tools or not using these tools? Like if they don't use them, will they be punished? Will they be penalized? Will they get lower marks? Or if you're a very strict teacher and you don't want them to use generative AI, are they afraid that if they use it and they get caught, they'll be suspended, expelled, they will be failed? There have been examples closer to my home where students have not been given their degree because they've been suspected of using generative AI. This is the type of thing that a student needs to appreciate before they start using. Will they actually qualify? Will they graduate if they use this tool? Or will they be suspended and they will have their qualification withheld? So Hugo, I don't know if I fully answered your question. Please do come back if I haven't.
Ok, pues agradecemos mucho. Vamos a hacer entrega del diploma al doctor Byrne. Por ahí está. We are presenting the certificate for Dr. Byrne, lector. Dice, el Programa Universitario de Inteligencia Artificial, Cátedra Universitaria de Inteligencia Artificial Plus, Universidad Autónoma de Chiapas, otorga el presente reconocimiento al doctor Adrian Byrne por haber impartido la conferencia magistral titulada Uso eficiente y seguro de la inteligencia artificial generativa para investigadores, como parte de la 8ª jornada de la Cátedra Universitaria de Inteligencia Artificial, Doctor Francisco Cervantes Pérez, el día 28 de enero del año 2026. Por la conciencia de la necesidad de servir, firma el doctor Osvaldo Chacón Rojas, rector de nuestra universidad.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Gabriela. Have a good day.